could kind of take their place and shut off the phones, tablets, pagers, you know, deal.
Pagers? Did we slip
like
into the 80s?
You did. So are we already rolling, Josh?
Yes.
Excellent. You know, let's stand up to do this. Alrighty. Hello. Welcome to the second episode of Night Caps, a podcast and talk show presented by AIGA Philadelphia and recorded live at United by Blue Coffee House and Clothier in Old City, Philadelphia. Every month we'll gather to talk about the ins and outs of the design industry with regional creative leaders and celebrate the creativity and diversity of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Mikey Illigan, Editor-in-Chief of Geekadelphia, the city's premier geek blog, also founders of the Philly Geek Awards, an annual one-night event celebrating and awarding the most outstanding geeks from our thriving tech, science, and creative communities. To my right over here is Josh Carter on the Magic Audio Machine.
Hello.
Tonight the discussion topic is full-time to freelance. We're going to hear about how it goes from working for the man to working for the self. Tonight I've got three different creative types with me, all of whom currently work for themselves doing different things. Let's start here with Jason. He's a game designer, developer, and writer. Under the brand Little Wins, he builds mobile titles on the Unity platform. A co-working pioneer, Jason spent 5 years at Indie Hall before moving to the new Philly Game Forge. Prior to Little Wins, Jason was tech lead at Red Teddimer, O'Connell & Partners. Jason's recent work includes development on mobile game Domino by Flyclops and Chemcrafter by Blue Cadet, which reached #1 in the App Store, plus the Game Jam titles Soulfill, Crowd of Dumbs, and Ostrich Fight. We've got Saul Rosenbaum, who is to Jason's right. He is a designer and web developer and the creative director at Visual Chutzpah. During his almost 30-year career as a visual designer and illustrator, Saul has designed almost everything imaginable, from iPhone apps to children's toys. Traditionally trained as a painter, and that's portraits, not houses, he's used technology for the past 20 years as his canvas to bring clients' creative goals to life. And lastly, we have Steve Decusatis, an independent designer and graphic design instructor. After working in both design and agency settings, Steve started his own design practice in 2011. He now collaborates with clients large and small through a mix of identity, print, and web design. He is a design instructor at Rowan University and has also taught at Philly U in the UArts Illustration Program and Temple University, Tyler School of Art, where he graduated from in 2002. All right, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I guess my first question would be, to start at the beginning, what was it like working for somebody else? I'm assuming you guys have, at least in this industry, worked for somebody else at some point earlier on. And yeah, just tell me what that's like. Jason, let's start with you.
What it's like working for somebody else?
Yeah, going way back.
I'm actually, I would say out of the three of us, I'm probably the most recent out. I don't know, Steve, when you were the last out.
On my own or out of college?
No, when was the last time you had a full-time job? Now I'm the interviewer, sorry.
4 years ago.
4 years ago? Okay, so I'm not the most recent out. I left about 5 years ago. Working for someone's great. You get to see how someone else runs their show, you know. It's hard to be a freelancer without having gone through that experience. You don't really know. You learn a lot from it, and you don't really know what you would do differently until you see someone doing something that either you agree with or you disagree with. But as a freelancer, you also work with a lot of different people, and so that experience and that education never really ends. I'm constantly observing how people run their businesses and taking elements from that and using them myself. So.
And you collaborate a lot with other people nowadays, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
that's one of the main benefits is that as a full-time employee, you're working with, you know, it depends on where you're at, but, you know, if you're in a service-based place, which a lot of creative people are, you're working either with the people that are directly employed by the same company you are or with clients. And it's tough to navigate those waters sometimes. But when you're on your own, you're still working with clients, but you also get to work with other creative people that you aren't so tied to. So you can kind of get rid of some of the political stuff that goes along with that, and you can be yourself a little bit more, I feel like. So.
You touched on an interesting word, because if there's one thing I've discovered in my own career that I can't say I'm a huge fan of, I mean, who's a fan of politics, right? So it's interesting that you're able to get away from that, or at least, experience, different difficulties to overcome, right? So what would you say about your past experiences, Saul?
My experience is a little different, because for the first 18 years of my career, I worked all day and I worked all night. I worked for someone all day, and then at night I dealt with my own kind of work, because I was not only a designer, I had an illustration rep who hooked me up with work that I do on my own time. I never, ever, never did actual other clients' work at my day job. That never happened.
So your freelance was kind of a side gig that eventually overtook what you were doing on your typical 9 to 5.
Yeah, my plan wasn't ever actually to go out on my own. I had a huge push of the place I was working at happened to have closed right around 9/11.
Okay.
And there was 6 months time there where there wasn't really a possibility to work. Life pretty much stopped.
Yeah.
So I had 6 months to get, I now didn't have a job. I had lots of my own little clients, and I had 6 months to get myself organized. So it kind of took off. I mean, I feel terrible saying that something good happened on that particular event, but it really worked out for me.
And what were you doing at the time?
I was the managing director of user experience at a .com.
Gotcha. Was that because of the .com bubble or because of 9/11?
It was
a little bit of both.
It was a little bit of both.
Yeah. Okay. And Steve, what would you say about your time working for other people? What were you doing, and how did? Well, I guess give us the beginnings of how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, just a little background. You mentioned 9/11. I graduated the year after that, so finding work was tough. There's a lot of people from the year before us still looking for work, but it was good experience just sending out 60 to 80 resumes that summer looking for work. I think one of the things it taught me was just show your work to anyone out there who will see it, because they might know someone, and they might live next to someone who's hiring or know someone. But anyway, after a few months, I started at a very small full-service studio, and then I worked at a larger studio/agency, and then in 2006, my wife and I moved to Vermont for a change of pace. I worked for what I thought was kind of a studio, and then I realized it's really more of like an ad agency. So I didn't really do too much freelancing while I was there, because it was like a ton of work and a long commute. And then we ended up moving back to Philly, about 2009. And then I kind of transitioned to work part-time remotely from that agency. Which
at the agency, what kind of design work were you doing? More traditional, interactive, anything like that?
Overall branding, print and web.
Okay.
TV, radio, mostly print, identity work, advertising. So we kind of worked out a deal, which was great. That I'd kind of give them a certain amount of hours per week remotely. So I just at that point I bought my own laptop and all my software ready to go. And then I was teaching part-time as well. It was right when Tyler moved from the Elkins Park campus to the main campus in North Philly.
Gotcha. Were you teaching up in Montgomery County or down here?
I taught for the first time, in 2005 at the Elkins Park campus. I just really, really wanted to do it. And I was only like 2 or 3 years out of school, but I just wanted to give it a shot.
Yeah,
and then,
what were you teaching?
It was just a sophomore design course, so we did. I think we did like some posters and if you guys remember CD packaging. We did some of that. Yeah,
that was my senior portfolio. So
so that was the only bummer about. I really wanted to move to Vermont. It was just like, I can't really teach, but But then when we moved back in 2009, I was able to get back in touch with them and teach at their new North Philly campus. So that was some income,
I've noticed a lot of people kind of taking similar paths as you guys, you know, when they first leave the full-time job and it's by choice, and going freelance is something that, you know, whether they're intending on doing it or not really and happen to fall upon it accidentally, they tend to subsidize their income by doing something like teaching or doing other jobs. I think one advice, some good advice that I'd received a couple of years ago when I was interested in possibly entertaining the idea of working for myself, someone was like, you know, do whatever it takes, you know, be a bartender or something, or do whatever else that, you know, pay the bills, work retail, whatever it takes, and to really support your passion.
Yeah,
So
seriously, when we, you know, I really just wanted to be on my own, and, you know, I don't mind working hard. I mean, I was looking for work everywhere. I was teaching, working for an agency part-time. I was even trying to work at screen printing shops, or even working at like Whole Foods or IKEA, or like just whatever it takes to kind of get by. It's like, I think if you work hard, it'll kind of work out, you know.
Was your shift to freelance more accidental or more intentional? It sounds like, you know, you were moving around geographically, which may have contributed to it, and also, you know, economically it was just a hard time. I guess it has been for a while, but especially around 9/11 for you and Saul, where you guys were in life.
Yeah.
Was it a very intentional move? Like, you know, I'm done working at this place, I'm going to do my own thing.
For me, it was really a slow transition.
Okay.
Which made it somewhat easy for me, I would say. As easy as it could be. It wasn't like totally jumping ship. It was a transition for sure. So it took me a while to kind of build that up, you know. And
you would agree to that, Saul, right? It
Yeah.
sounds like your experience is a little similar too. Like it was a slow transition.
It was, you know, one day I had a job, the next day I didn't.
Yeah.
I just didn't leave it. I mean, I knew I was going to lose it. It wasn't like it was, I came, the doors were closed. I had months of knowing eventually this is going to end. But it was really just an inevitable step. I just was a little too chicken to do it myself.
Gotcha. So you needed some motivation to take that big leap.
Well, yeah, because it's. I mean, I had been successfully doing both, and I recommend anyone actually doing both for quite a while to make sure that it's for you before you make that step of leaving a solid job. You should never leave a solid job without a plan, because usually when you tell someone who's depending on you to do a job every day that I'm done with it, they don't want you back. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, they may be nice to you, but they don't want to have to go through the hassle of finding someone else to do your job. So,
understood. And then I guess, I mean, okay, here's a hypothetical question. Say that job in that company
hadn't gone away?
Hadn't gone under, hadn't gone away, you know, work remained steady, you know, you had, you know, the promise of promotions and other things like that.
That's
moving
a really
forward.
hard question.
Yeah, like what would have happened then?
I really did like that job, and it paid very well. So it's hard to say. I think eventually I would have just done it anyhow. I don't know when, though. I mean, like I said, it may sound like doing both jobs is difficult, but I'd been doing it for so long that it had become almost a lifestyle. You know, you come home from work, you spend a couple hours with your wife, she goes to sleep, and you know.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, that's just the
way
way it
was. That's not my life, except I'm like playing video games.
Yeah. It's just like that, but with a paycheck.
I'm killing monsters.
Yeah. You need to monetize that.
I should get paid for that, I think.
You should.
Yeah. But
user testing or something.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean, this was years before Twitter, but at that point, at least in Philly, I had a real reputation for the fact that Saul doesn't sleep, and it wasn't so much just hype.
You don't sleep to this day, based on what I've
Not a lot,
noticed,
a couple hours.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that, like, duality, you know?
I did that for 18 years.
18 years? So from the day that you were working at this, started working for this company?
No, I didn't work at the company for 18 years.
Oh, right, but
in the course of
your professional career.
Yes. Yeah, I always did that.
Okay.
When I got out of art school, I desperately wanted to be an illustrator, and it became very obvious that that's a really, really difficult single track. You need to augment that. I'm not a good waiter. I tried that.
Yeah.
But I'm a reasonable designer. I was at the time a reasonable designer. So I got jobs in design studios, composing houses, type houses, when that was a thing. Anyone who would offer me a desk, I would do the work. I'd learn everything they had to teach me, and then I'd apply what I learned at those jobs, and I'm using plural there because there was a lot of them, to what I was doing at night. And by the time, 18 years later, that I decided that I ended up going out on my own, I was pretty well versed in everything anybody could ask me to do at that point. I'd done it a lot. I mean, in the course of 18 years, I had 21 jobs. And that wasn't me getting fired. That was me, okay, I've learned everything there is to learn. I will be leaving now.
That's awesome.
And that's definitely like, it's a good point, because if you can't be diverse in what you do, it's really hard to be freelance, because people ask you for so many different things. Mm-hmm. If you're just trying to go out and do one narrow thing, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. Yeah. Whereas, it's a lot of hats, it actually kind of works here. Also, like, getting all that experience, you're also going to be building a huge network of people.
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
And like, without that, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. And you'd been at Red Teddimer for a number of years,
right?
Before you started to do your own thing. And no offense to Steve or Saul, but of the three here, you probably have the most technical lean.
Right.
Yeah, because right now, what would you consider yourself, more of a game designer or developer?
I'm definitely more of a developer.
Okay.
I started out in Flash development and HTML development, and so that's why when I was at Red Teddimer, I was a developer there, and kind of just had bosses that got fired or left for some reason. I would just kind of fill in some of that void, and moved up that way. And then my jump from there was all about, I wanted to be involved in mobile sooner than what they were offering. The clients weren't really going for it at the time. And it coincided with the economic downturn in between like 2007, 2009. Mm-hmm. They started feeling it more in 2009. And they had a round of layoffs. And eventually went through some cutting down to the point where they were offering healthcare for anyone who they were looking to. It wasn't a layoff; it was
furlough.
Furlough. That's the word I'm looking for.
I recall these things because a little bit of insider story. Jason and I actually worked together at the same time.
Right.
Back in 2009. So I'm actually no stranger to jumping around a lot. Saul, you were saying that in 18 years you had 21 jobs. I think par for the course. Knock on wood, I want that to just stop yesterday. But, because it's just not for me. But, yeah, I'm on track to pretty much have the same amount of jobs in half the time. So, but back to what you were saying, Jason. So, you wanted to do different things that weren't currently being offered in your current position. Is that
a
way to sum it up?
Yeah, that was a major part of it. There was two aspects of it, and that was one of them. And so where you guys kind of filtered into freelance, I walked into the owner's office. I thanked him for my time there, and he thanked me for my time there, and I said, I'm going to take the laptop and I'll give it back to you in like 6 months, and we'll talk then. And I left, and I took the laptop, and they were awesome about that. And they
Do you
gave
still
me
have it?
No. Once I was able to buy my own, I bought my own and gave that back to him.
And there went the guy that interviewed me. So, no.
At that, yeah.
I think you had interviewed me. Well, I ended up contracting at Red Teddimer for about 3 months in that year. But you had interviewed me like a while prior. I didn't end up there, and then I ended up there later. And then we worked together for a while, and then you departed, and then I left.
The main memory I have of you working there is I was checking Twitter, and I saw that you had written that you wanted to be the Gary Vaynerchuk of Wings or something like that.
Yes.
Or something along those lines. And I remember seeing this, and then I saw like he responded, and he was like, "You should just do it, man." And I look up, and you're like sweating at your keyboard, and just like, and you're like, "This is crazy." Like Twitter was blowing up on you.
Yeah,
yeah, but that's my recollection of that.
I want to be
hard
the
day
Gary
of work,
Vaynerchuk of Wings.
tweeting with Gary Vaynerchuk. So
it's not a bad gig.
So okay, back in those days. So you departed well. It went well.
I
right?
purposefully left.
Had you been preparing and like kind of building up, ramping up for the freelance world?
So the way that I prepared is just that in advertising there's a lot of turnover, and there specifically at this agency and pretty much all agencies in the area are like this. They kind of recycle people. So I was there for 5 years, and so the amount of people that I knew in the industry by the time I left was pretty ridiculous. Like I knew the creative directors at most of the other places. So it was pretty easy to leave just because I could let people know that I was going to freelance and see if anyone had work. The other side of that is that there was a co-working space called Indie Hall that was in a very small office, and they weren't really taking anyone on at the time, and they were bursting at the seams at the place they were at, and they decided to put down on a new place that was much larger that could take more people. And so the two of those things, the downturn in the economy and the offer for healthcare and the move of this co-working space into a new space with some people that I already knew and had worked with before, it all just kind of coincided nicely. So I don't want to say that I did a whole lot of planning. It just kind of was there to be had.
Yeah. And like you felt maybe that your time as tech lead at this ad agency was coming to a close, and you were interested by doing, to do other things, and other things kind of coincided, economic downturn, Indie Hall moving into a new location. It kind of just all worked out, right?
It all worked together.
Cool. So,
and
you're still doing it, so, right?
And that space was super helpful. I didn't have to go and find, like side work or things that weren't directly involved with the goals that I had, because I was able to meet people very quickly that had work immediately to hand off, and because I could do different things like Flash and was getting into mobile and whatnot, I could take on things that that could pay the bills.
I think space is actually pretty important. We were talking about that earlier. It's really difficult. I mean, everybody has like a kitchen table, but honestly, I've said it before, I can't imagine trying to exist working off of a kitchen table that's also a kitchen table. I mean, if you have a kitchen table in an office, that's a great desk. But if it's a kitchen table in a kitchen, it's a nightmare. It's like, well, I'm working, and where we want to eat? It's like, well, I'll move my work. It's important to have a place to work. That's like step one. I'm going to go out on my own. You need an office. It's just, even if it's if in a closet, you need a place that isn't dual purpose, because you need to get your head in that game every day. Wake up, do work. Too many distractions otherwise. It's like, oh, new Iron Man's out.
Yeah. So unless you're like super disciplined, you can't make it work. I mean,
there's three ways that people have problems, and the first problem is that in the morning they can't get engaged. The second problem is that throughout the day they fall out of being engaged, and then the third problem is that they can't disconnect at the end of the day. And it's really easy to have one of those problems in a really bad way if you're working at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Too many distractions.
Now, you guys are all married, correct? Well, I know you two are. Yeah.
Not together, but
not
No,
together.
no. Yeah. That would be a little strange.
You guys are all
we come
married
to
to other people.
I think so, yeah.
Outside.
Right, this isn't Utah.
So, I mean, how does that... So, one thing that comes up in many of the companies that I've been in is kind of this work-life balance. And, Jason, you kind of touch on pretty much 3 bullet points on that whole idea of, like, you're either working too much, you're too absorbed into it, or you have a hard time getting into it. And then, Saul, you kind of touched on the topic of, like, space and stuff like that. How does all this, I guess, affect, your spouse, your partner, like... How does it affect, like, home life?
Well, I have a unique situation because my wife is also freelance.
Okay.
So she has to deal with those same 3 issues, and then we have to deal with those together.
And you guys haven't killed each other yet?
We haven't.
That's
and the
awesome.
way we've done it, is that we don't work on the same stuff together.
Okay.
And people find that weird when they find out we're both freelance. They just assume that we should start a company and have this weird like.
And they figure out you're more on the development end, she's more on the design end.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually would like technically work out because she can make things pretty and I make things work. But we decided early on when I left and went freelance, and then a year later she saw what it did to me, like how much happier I was with life, and I was sleeping. Finally, and
Sleeping?
I know, right? So she decided to make the move too, and we figured out how to do it. And one of the ways to do it was to just completely separate. And she works on her business, and I work on my business, and we talk all the time about it, and we give each other advice. And I'll read the email she's going to send out because she's super passionate, and she sends these like 4-paragraph emails, and I'll whittle it down into like one sentence, and so we're constantly supporting each other in that way, but we keep the business separate. There's other issues for that. Building's a big one. Like, we don't want all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And so
what would you say about Saul's point about space and having an office?
So I like leaving in the morning and going somewhere and then setting up my laptop and then getting at it, and that works for me. She likes being at home more, and there's plenty of opportunities for her to be out of the house, but she just prefers to work from home, and it works for her. She doesn't have that same. I have the get engaged issue.
Does she have her own office at home? That
she does. Yeah, we have our own space there at home, and so because I'm not there, she has her own office, and she doesn't have that get engaged problem. She sits down and immediately gets to work, and I would say probably hers is maybe disconnecting a bit. So
that's awesome. Well, I mean, not awesome that she can't disconnect, but it's cool that you're both freelancers and you guys just make it work. What's your daily freelance day look like, Steve?
Well, I know that the space thing came up. Just for money reasons, I did work from a home office for about 3 or 4 years, and it is tough. Finally, within the last year or so, I finally got out of the house, share an office with a friend and actually a client, and I have a little space, which is great. So I have my own little studio right on Germantown Avenue in Chestnut Hill.
That's awesome. So you're kind of doing the co-working thing as well.
It's a shared space. We have our own private room, but we have a communal lobby area and a communal conference room.
Gotcha.
So if I need to do an actual meeting or a private phone call or something, you can hop in there. So the 4 years before that were a little tough, but it helped to save money. When we moved back to Philly, it took a while to sell our house in Vermont. So I basically was, we had 2 houses for 4 years.
Oh, that's hard.
That's a long time to have 2 houses.
A little
Did
bit.
you ever work from Vermont?
From Vermont?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I actually have a lot of clients and friends.
Yeah. I mean, if you had the house there for that long, right?
Yeah. I mainly we tried to mask it and pretend it was our mountain home, vacation home. Tried to pretend it was the second house because we wanted it to be. But anyway, so yeah, for 4 years I did the home office thing. I would just try to go out to bookstores and coffee shops at least half the day to break that up.
Gotcha.
And that was my way to get out of the house.
Cool.
And then teaching helped to get out half of the week as well.
And you've taught it at a number of local universities and things
Tyler,
like that.
Philly U, Rowan, and UArts.
That's awesome. So, Saul, you've been doing this the longest of anyone.
Yeah.
That I know, I think. So
could be.
Yeah. So, how's it affected? What's your daily day look like? How's it affected things at home?
Remember me telling you that the first 18 years I made it into a lifestyle?
Yeah.
So I was already married at that point. So it's her lifestyle too. She was used to it. My wife was used to it. She's incredibly patient and really understanding. But she doesn't expect me to, show up at things. It's like, oh, it's all busy. And once I started,
I'm glad you could be here tonight.
Yeah, that's true. And but that was before. Now it's better. My big issue is I have no trouble getting started in the morning. I have no trouble getting into it. It's that disengaging thing is hard when you're not done what you intended to do. I mean, I'm sure everyone here.
That's the toughest
You start every day with the best of intentions of getting to these things on your list, and all the stuff that comes up in that day keeps you from getting to it. And
It's a story of my life.
absolutely, it's everybody's. But so at the end of the day, you look at your list of all the stuff that you needed to get done, and you didn't get even to them. My first natural inclination is, well, I'll just power through it. It's Wednesday. I have till Friday. That's like 70 hours, whatever the math is there.
Yeah.
I can do that. So
You should sleep, man.
I do sleep. I mean, it's you just, you get what you need to get done because you've told someone you're going to. That's, it's the key to success.
Yeah.
Deliver stuff when you say you're going to.
I think you and I are pretty similar. Like, I just ignore the fact that AM and PM exists. And I'm like, well, didn't do this today. I guess I have until my body shuts down.
There is an easy way to do that. Every morning when you wake up, you just don't pull the blinds. And that way you have no idea what time it is.
It's like a casino.
Yeah.
Like, it's 5 a.m. or
There's no
5 p.m.
clocks in Saul's house. All the shutters are closed and everything
Seriously,
like that.
Get up. I don't know if 7 a.m. is early or not. It's when I always get up. Read my email from the day before. Attack the stuff that's in it, stuff on my list, and ideally done by 7 o'clock at night when my wife gets home from work.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
No.
Now, the key is that if I didn't get it done, there's a 50-50 chance that after she goes to bed, I go back and work.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But
And what does your wife do?
she's a legal secretary.
Okay, so she has kind of like the structured 9-to-5 sort of situation, I'm assuming?
Slightly longer hours. But
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And she's, like I said, she's used to me being involved, like on Saturdays. Saturdays, sadly, is my busy. I do a lot of work. The phone doesn't ring on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of work done. And I'm happy to get done because that's the key to getting things done is to knock it off the list, at
Yeah.
least for a couple days.
Okay. So we've covered space and we've covered space, time of day, and different hurdles. There's one big thing that was always a huge problem that I never wanted to do in the short periods that I attempted any kind of freelance work is paperwork, taxes, billing. I mean, we're all creative types here. I hate that shit. Like, it sucks. Sometimes I was like, you know what? I don't want that $100 that bad. Literally. If it's like small enough, I'll be like, whatever. And this is why, I continue to work for companies. I'm not meant to be a freelancer, I don't think. But how do you guys tackle the thing that I hate the most about working for yourself or even doing side work? Jason?
Well, the number, I should say the budget has gone up over the course of the 5 years I've been freelancing. So that I won't get involved with a project if it's not over a certain budget, because you need to be able to clear a certain amount just to cover all the paperwork that goes into, doing work with people. New business is even worse. And so a lot of people will come and say, we have this budget, and it's just like, can't do anything for you, because it would literally cost me more to get involved in this business than you have available.
Yeah. Sounds like something you may have picked up in your agency days.
It really does.
Does it? Is that
well,
snooty?
It feels like it no, it's not
No?
snooty at all. I think
Well, it's just
it makes fiscal sense.
It's just it costs a lot of money to
Yeah.
to do a contract, and you have to be really good at reading contracts. If you can't read a contract, it gets expensive, because then you have to pay someone to read them for you. So I became very good at reading contracts and knowing what things say, and I'm kind of a stickler for rules. And I've been in relationships with clients where things have gone one way or another, and it's, if your contract's good, you can just point to the contract and be like, well, this is what happens now. And it's not personal. You don't have to like yell at each other.
And you drafted up your contracts from the beginning, or you had someone else do that?
So what I did was I went and I got the contract of two people that I knew were freelancing,
Mm-hmm.
read through both, and just picked the parts that made sense.
Yeah, kind of extrapolated and wrote your own based
Yes.
on what you learned.
Basically. And then what winds up happening is you just keep rewriting it the entire time you're going.
Yeah.
If something happens, you're like, I didn't think of that in here, and then you write that in there.
Yeah.
And that's how that works. And that is literally the difference between freelancing and working full time for someone. Like almost that's it. It's that contract, paperwork, taxes, like that stuff. You don't have to do any of that when you're working full time for someone, but you're working full time for someone at that point. So
Maybe you can have enough budget to just pay someone else to handle all the paperwork. But then you've kind of started on the path of becoming your own mini company. I mean, you are your own company.
you are your own company, but at the same time, I mean, you can't just hand over, especially the contract and the taxes. You can't just hand that to someone and be like, do this, because you need to know exactly what your terms are. And with taxes, you need to know the ins and outs of what you can write off and what is actually legal and what is not legal, and you know where you can get benefits from. So if you don't know that stuff, if you don't handle that on your own in some way, you're putting yourself in bad situations with clients, and two, you're just leaving money on the table with taxes. So
Yeah, one thing I learned in the time that and I do random stuff like photography, which I'll get paid for, and one thing I always try to express to other creative people is don't devalue yourself. Know what you're worth. You said you only work certain jobs at a certain budget. So you're not really scrambling for like these $200 projects. I'm
no,
assuming.
just because I wouldn't be able to keep up with the business and paperwork that goes along with those projects.
Yeah, you'd break even on the time that you spend doing paperwork for all to make just a couple $100, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I could do it, but there'd be no protections in place for myself.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this long enough that, I've been in some weird situations, and so I know that you need to have those protections in place. So.
Gotcha. What would you say about all this, Saul?
I have like a couple different kinds of projects. Like I have a lot of long-standing clients who basically what I'm doing is they give me work and I'm literally billing them hourly for the time it takes to satisfy whatever the requirement is. I have a surprising number of clients like that.
Yeah.
Where all they're really looking for paperwork is really specific time records, which I've gotten pretty good at keeping. Then I have other projects that are, I need this, how much will that cost? And I have a kind of a fixed price deliverable that's based on a contract that you get half up front. It took me forever to learn how to do that, and it took me equally forever to have the balls to ask for half up front. I always felt like that was something wrong. I should have been asking.
Do you do like a 50-50 beginning and end? Okay.
50 and then 50 on delivery.
50 on delivery.
Because
okay.
I've learned that second 50 can really drag out if
Yeah.
you don't do it when here is your work. I would like literally you give them one thing with one hand and you take something with the other, because that second 50 can really comes very slowly.
I like the guts of the 50% up front. But I mean that's all based on time estimates that you yourself have drawn up.
Yeah.
It's tough. That's really tough, because then you'll get paid half the fee, but you won't see the other half for a really long time sometimes.
So there's a trick to it.
Yeah.
So let's say
what's the trick?
The trick is that you double the cost of whatever it's going to cost you, so that first 50% covers the cost of the work.
100%. Yeah. Well, now they all know. You just told them, man.
That's fine. It's a good practice, and if every one of them has the wherewithal to do it, that would make the industry that much better.
Yeah.
But the problem I have is people who don't do that, and the people who do massive amounts of work for literally no money. They're not doing themselves or any of us in this room any favors.
That's why I kind of hated working at. I mean, this is why I found myself bouncing between agency-like settings and corporate-like settings, because you have the stereotypes that are associated with both. The dullness of a corporate setting, that's a very broad generalization, and also agencies which kind of like to spend a lot of time making those pitches, and there's pros and cons to both environments. So
I don't know what art school or design school is like now, but when I went and when we graduated, they kind of instilled in us that we should be glad to get the work, and they put us out on the street hungry.
Right.
I will do anything as long as it's creative. Give it to me, and I'll kick its ass. And the problem with that is that a lot of people got taken advantage of because we were so eager to do the work. And I still see people. It's like, oh, I can do that for $100. It's like, really? Because I couldn't even write the email to respond to that for $100, let alone do the work.
But there's also something to say about the fact that a lot of people need portfolio pieces in order to.
So do portfolio pieces. Don't give it to somebody, because the minute you give it to them, you've just said, here, this is worth literally nothing.
Right, and you can't ever get more money from them.
You never will. They've lost respect for you entirely at that point. It's like, here, I've like logo contests. So everyone I know who's ever responded to a logo contest, I go to my Rolodex, I take out their card, and I tear it up and I throw it out.
Yeah, now we're diving into the dangerous world of spec work, which everyone hates. Or should.
Think of it this way: you have a client. Oh, I have all this work, but I don't have a lot of money right now. What I really need is I need a logo for a client, and I will make it up to you on the next project. Okay. So you ever hear anyone ever say that to you?
Yeah, I mean, you get that sort of thing. Yeah, you get that a lot, and you never do it. Don't ever do it.
Don't ever do it, because you basically just said, yeah, this is worth nothing, and everything I do from now on, you can kind of.
Well, I mean, it goes in the sense, if you went to a restaurant and you ordered a dinner and they came out and gave it to you, and then they're like, you don't have to pay, we got this, and you go back the next time, you're kind of like, we got it free last time. I should, maybe get it free this time too, instead of like actually paying the full price.
I mean, there's a lot of come-ons. People are very creative. It's great exposure. It's a national campaign. Great, it's a national campaign. You've got a budget,
right?
And I'll tell you what. You give me the work. You pay me what it's worth. And the next project we do together, I'll give you a break.
Yeah.
But never the first project.
It's so
honestly,
tough being a.
They're never getting a break on that second project either. But it would be a much better world for designers if we all turned that around and said, no, our work has value. Doesn't matter, or hey, I didn't even use it. I love that one. That one happened to me once. It's like, we loved the work. It was great, but we didn't use it. It's like, I don't care. Well, we didn't use it. Doesn't matter to me.
That was your.
I've bought a lot of stuff I've never used.
Sure.
You find that sweater with its price tag still on it in your closet. It's just like that.
I have a fridge full of food I have no intentions of cooking.
Yeah.
And eventually, it's just going to go in the bin.
Mm-hmm. But you have to pay for it, right?
Exactly. So it's the same kind of thing.
Another thing I've seen, or at least my wife deals with this, and I'm going to relay just a story about her. She does web design mainly. That's most of the freelance she does. So a lot of her projects, she'll collaborate with a developer, and the way that the contract will be scoped out, it's basically they get paid a certain amount in increments across the entire project. And so she'll do the graphic design portion, and then she'll hand the files off, and the developer will do the development work. And what's happened to her a couple times is that she'll get maybe like the first two portions of the payment, but she'll be splitting each of those deposits evenly with the developer, and the developer will wind up having an issue on the back end. And then so she will have money tied up in projects that she's like no longer working on and really doesn't have any control over, because she's partnered on the payments throughout the whole entire project. I don't know if either of you two have run into that before.
Never done that exactly.
No, but I've been trying to move her away from that so that the portions of the payment, she gets more of the upfront on the payments.
Her work is done first.
Exactly, and it's delivered and signed off on.
Or maybe design and development should be itemized differently. I mean, I've seen these kind of situations. It sounds like a lot of the problems that you guys are talking about are things that I've seen on the agency side. Projects, running out of budget and time and all that because they get caught up in development hell or what have you. Anything.
Well, the projects or the problems that agencies have it's very similar. It's not really they're not really any different, in the long run.
Yeah. Except when you're working on your own, you're the account manager. You're everything, right?
Right.
That kind of brings up the two skills that I did not have when I ended up on my own. that you just can't learn in a graceful way is how to deal with, I mean, when you're working at a design studio, there were account executives that dealt with clients directly. When you're dealing with them yourself, it's like that's a skill set that isn't necessarily natural to someone who wants to sit in a quiet room and, design stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is how to deal with that same person when they're pissed off. And it took me forever to learn to kind of not get confrontational. 'Cause I had a reputation for a long time of being confrontational.
Which is
Soul.
It could be the lack of sleep.
I think, yes.
I think he put it together.
Steve figured it out.
But it's one of those things that you always figure, I'll handle it well when it happens. And on the phone, it's easy to deal with it because it's like, well, you can kind of, put your hand up at the thing. But when you're sitting across from someone who's now upset or mad or for whatever reason they're having a bad day and they decide to take it on you, it's like, I don't have this skill. How do I deal with it? So, I mean, it may seem like that's something that any human can have, but I mean, I didn't. It wasn't. So that was something it took me quite a while to learn without burning like lots of bridges because,
It sounds like your payment structures at this point are mostly retainers.
Yeah. Well, I get like half up front and then for those kind of projects.
Mm-hmm.
But I have plenty of other clients who I just bill.
How far back are like your oldest clients? Are talking
20 years.
20 years? That's awesome.
Wow.
That's insane.
Some of those people have moved jobs,
Mm-hmm.
but you consistently do what you say you're going to do what they need to do, and
That's awesome.
and go a little bit further. And those people will take you with them if you solve their problems. That's kind of the deal. Everybody's got this thing that they don't want to deal with, and if you're willing to deal with it and make them look good consistently, they will consistently give you work.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, they've been with you through a couple economic downturns. They've changed jobs, and they still keep you in mind.
Yeah.
And they're still, paying your bills, I guess, right?
Lights still go on when I flip the switch.
That's awesome. What are some things that you've learned, I guess, in your time doing this, Steve?
Besides the lack of sleep and the, I've never had any of the anger client across the the table thing.
Yeah, how do you handle paperwork, I guess?
I was going to say, besides the sleep and the angry clients, I have kind of a lot in common with Saul as far as I do a mix of hourly work for different studios or agencies, or now we're getting at the age where like friends start companies, which is cool. We're not all broke college kids anymore.
Yeah,
so that's kind of nice. But the work I do per project is the same as Saul mentioned. It's 50. I do the 50-50 thing. I never thought it was weird asking for half up front. And everything I do is really word of mouth or a reference. I don't do any like pitch work that like any of that ad agency model. I don't follow any of that stuff. So I'm never losing any money creating upfront work.
Mm-hmm.
I try to keep overheads low if I can, and then like you said, you work hard, over deliver, and then those relationships really matter. I mean, I still work with people from old studios or agencies, or even friends from college, or
What's one skill, or Saul's learned something that he implements now that he wasn't doing before? Like how you can't just give it. I mean, I'm going to ask a very difficult question, but I mean, what's one thing that has helped you manage relationships better with clients? I think that's something that's somebody just starting out, fresh out of school, or even fresh time, the first time as a freelancer, they're not going to necessarily have that skill, because when I was a designer, a junior designer, I always had like several layers of management above me. Never really had to worry about the client. I enjoyed maybe picking up the phone every once in a while and be like, oh, client has a question. Like, oh man, they get to talk to me. Awesome. That's what it was like back in the days when I was 22 and desk phones at work still existed.
Right.
I think recently someone tried to put a desk phone at my last job. I'm like, get it away from me. I don't want to talk to anyone. Yeah, and I'm like, I need my multi-monitor space, thank you. But anyway, so what have you learned to manage relationships better?
I think it just kind of happened over time. I mean, you really, like, if you have a pretty good online or social media presence, I mean, you do get emails from out of nowhere, and you get phone calls from out of the blue. You know, hey,
that's how I ended up hosting this podcast.
There you go.
So.
You know, hey, I saw your website and I need a logo, or hey, someone mentioned to call you. But when you just see a number come in, you don't know who it's going to be.
I usually Google it.
I try to answer it, you know, if I'm in a quiet place. But I think it just happened with experience. I mean, at first you're just like, okay, you're calling me, I guess. But, you know, over a few years you get a little better at it.
That's good.
And I try to, you know, with a few conversations, whether it's email or phone, you kind of get better at weeding out some of the people that are like dance around the I have no budget, here's a great opportunity.
Here's a great opportunity, lots of exposure, I'll pay you sometime, maybe, sure.
So if you get that vibe, you can do what Saul said and double your estimate.
You seem pretty even keeled to me. I mean, I can just imagine like a client. Has a client ever blown up at you? Because you seem like a pretty laid back
blown
guy.
up, man.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean,
not yet anyway.
I've seen fights at different offices, you know, on the phone or like angry phone calls or whatever. No major fights yet, you know.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess I'm lucky in that sense.
What about you, Jason? Had any blowouts with some clients lately?
Not lately. Things are going pretty well. I've gotten older, and
happens.
so like just naturally, you know, I have a higher tolerance for things, and I've grown to learn patience and how to filter myself a bit more. I definitely, like, when I was working for someone, I remember distinctly being brought into a boss's office and had to explain to him that I was Irish and I was passionate about things, and I was like told to like tone down some of my Irishness but you know, there's a lot more consequences now, you know, so I can't just get in a crazy argument with someone, because that travels.
Yes.
And all of my business, not some of my business, all of my business is word of mouth. And so it's just based on recommendations and networking. And so if there's any kind of chink in that armor, you know, I'm going to have problems getting business. And so the thing that I have gotten in, you know, the heated conversations I do have are usually mainly around payments. You know, it's kind of like the downside of freelancing is, or the dark side, I should say, is you do have to chase payments from time to time. And there's a whole lot of reasons why that can happen. You know, sometimes it's not even the client's fault. Like, they're having trouble getting their money from whoever they're getting it from. But there's definite times where you have to kind of put your foot down and be like, you know, this work stops if these payments don't come in. And so that's why it goes back to having a really good contract, because if you have line items to point at in a contract that you both signed that have, you know, the outline of the next steps for what happens if they don't pay in this certain amount of time, then you can avoid arguing, because there's nothing to argue about.
Yeah, you could have the threat of legal on them, but I mean, do you necessarily want to pay for a lawyer to chase them? You know,
no, and they know that too, and they don't want to get involved that deeply either.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always the threat of that, but the reality is that just like I'm trying to maintain like a good reputation, they are too.
Yeah.
And if they become known as a client that doesn't pay, you know, they're going to have trouble finding people to do their work. You know, so it's kind of a two-way street, and you know, if you've got the right checks and balances in place, then you can just avoid a lot of the arguments up front. And I can't think of you know, getting in an argument about the work I was doing. I mean, sometimes, you know, things get a little kooky, and especially no
revision hell or anything like that. That's a typical thing.
I'm on the development side mostly, so my things either work or they don't work.
Yeah.
And I've been in some weird situations where like I've built something and it made other things not work, other parts, which is pretty common in development.
Yep.
And so that can be a little sticky sometimes when you've worked on something very hard and you've tested the hell out of it and you give it to them, and then the thing you made a month ago for them stopped working because of that new thing, and that can be frustrating.
Gotcha.
But they come to understand how that works once you've worked with them for a while. So
what do you think, Saul?
There's a handful of questions that I've learned to kind of ask people when kind of vetting a client. One of which seems kind of odd is, have you ever purchased design before? And if the answer is no, it's something to I always try to keep in mind, because if someone's never dealt with a designer before, you're liable to get feedback like, wow, this is a lot of work, we just don't like it.
Make it fluffier.
Make it pop. Make it sexy.
Yeah.
Actually, those things, okay, make it pop, maybe make something bigger, increase contrast, but we don't like it isn't feedback. Right. And I've been in rooms where the walls are covered in work, and the only feedback is not what we were thinking about, we just don't like it.
Failure to communicate, though, that's a very general skill that,
Well, sometimes, in that same project, people were moving in and out of the project, so it wasn't even on me. It was like, knowledge loss on the client side. Mm-hmm. Other thing is that there's a whole, it's difficult to estimate how much time it will take for me to teach them to give feedback on design. Mm-hmm. It's like, we just don't like blue. I've actually had someone say that to me at one of my jobs, is that we love this design. There's just something about it we don't like. Well, a week later, we figured out that it was too freaking blue.
Wow. All right.
Sorry, United by Blue.
This is why I'm a developer.
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah.
It's all very. Sometimes we like to think that design is, all scientific and stuff, but it's highly subjective.
Oh, completely.
And even things
and trends
like,
change and all that.
Right. Even things like UX that is kind of scientific based on testing. If the client doesn't like it, even if it's the shortest distance from point A to point B, and they don't like it, you're not going to get it past them.
Oh no, I was most recently working in the UX department at my last company, and we met twice a week to kind of like go through the experience designs for the next iteration of our product, and we would just it would just be argument fest, like talking about like, well, this is the best way to do things, or this is the best way to do things, or like I think we should do this, and no, it's just endless debate. So even the concept of making something easier to use and redesigning for that is also subjective. So interesting. So fair assessment. Would you guys all say you're pretty happy just working on your own? Was it the best decision you ever made?
I'm not complaining. Are you complaining?
No, yeah.
Steve?
How about you?
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are you still teaching now?
I teach 1 to 2 days a week.
Yeah.
So about a third of my week is teaching.
Would you also say like about a third of your income is probably coming from teaching?
Not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still mostly freelancer then? Or?
Yeah, I first started teaching night classes, so it was almost like extra work on top of the 40 plus hour week. But I recently started doing more day classes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, anyway, teaching's great. It doesn't always pan out to the same percentage of income, I guess.
Have you been teaching as long as you've been freelancing, or did you do it later to subsidize because it's something you always wanted to do, or did you? Yeah,
they both kind of came off and on. Yeah, so I first taught in 2005, so it's like almost 9 years ago. And then the freelance work was probably around then as well. Probably the first. Well, this summer I graduated, I did some freelance work because no one was hiring full time, really, that I could find. But then my first full-time job kept me pretty busy, so I didn't do too much freelancing outside of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you maintained kind of like long-term clients
these
years?
I still work for at least a couple studios and agencies that I've worked for and freelanced at.
That's awesome.
Some of it's identity work, some of it's interactive work, some of it's more brainstorming, writing, naming concepts stuff,
More kind of like creative direction, maybe, in a sense?
Yeah, art direction and branding stuff, so
yeah.
Campaign type stuff.
How much of the type of work you've been doing, how much has that shifted in the time that you've been doing it? Or do you have any limitations that we've learned that, Jason's more of a developer, Saul's kind of a omni designer, as I like to say. What type of work do you gravitate towards, or where do you stop?
It's somewhat similar to when I got out of school. It's a kind of a mix of, I'd say it's like 2/3 print, 1/3 interactive.
Okay.
The only thing a little better now is I usually contract with programmers more, where right out of school it was really more kind of what I felt like it was more on you to like design the site and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the whatever Dreamweaver Flash
Yeah.
days, I guess. But
Yeah.
now it's like I think it's a little bit more like, okay, I want to print a cool piece. I want to pay a good printer to produce it, and I try to do that with the interactive stuff too. It's like, okay, I could maybe do some basic stuff that I've learned, forgot over the last 12 years, but I'd rather pay someone who's good at it and does it every day to actually produce that, you know.
How much of your work do you think is outsourced like that, and do you make the client aware of this?
Yeah, everything's everything's shown. I guess I'm not. There's some places that I'll try to hide the fact that it's 2 people and try to paint the picture that there's this false team of 10 people at a studio. I don't think there's any reason at all to try to hide that stuff.
I've seen a lot of weird stuff in my days. I've seen a lot of small quote unquote companies that are actually just one person.
Right.
You know, and then they had like a whole like they tried to make it look like that they were bigger than they are. And I don't see the point in hiding that.
I've done that before.
Yeah, you've done that.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, not like saying there's one proper way, but I just found it strange sometimes.
Because you can get more money that way.
Yeah,
That's what it comes down to. I mean, you can get a bigger budget. I've started going the opposite direction from that, though. I think, going from like, I mean, if you even right now, if you go to my website, it's all phrased as we.
Well, you're very royal, so.
Right? And, I'm like Costanza.
Yeah.
But I think there's a benefit to, especially right now. I feel like times have changed so that the individual has a lot more say than maybe they used to.
Yeah.
I've thrown the word "way" around a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think, Saul? About this whole concept of like, posing as a company, or a company posing as a person. Even I don't know.
I mean, we are a company.
We are a company.
You're right.
And they're paying a company. They're not writing the checks out to me personally, so they're paying a company. But I I have someone I use pretty heavily for client-facing stuff because, honestly, I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and she's better at it than I am. So I let her deal with, here, teach the client how to use WordPress, please. Because
So you've effectively hired your own account manager.
for the most part, she's super good with people. She's very patient, and while she's doing that, I can be doing something else.
It's smart to know when to do that, when to delegate.
There's certain things that I'm great at. There's certain things I'm horrible at. And knowing the difference between those things is the reason I'm still doing what I'm doing. Now, I'm not going to try to do what Jason does. I'm not going to try to do what Steve does. I'm going to do what I do. And anything else that I need done, I will find someone to do it.
Sounds good. And you bill out and handle the paperwork accordingly.
Yeah, she bills me. They pay me. And I generally don't mark that person up. That may sound strange for people who come from an agency, but I mark my own time up. It's her time. She gets paid what she gets paid, and I feel like everyone I always despised marking her time up.
Yeah. You touched on an interesting thing. Are you guys all legal entities? I know you are.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah,
Steve?
self-titled LLC, yeah.
And how important do you think that is for anyone starting out? And I guess to expand that a little bit further, is it something you would recommend? What are some other quick tips, Steve?
Well, definitely being an LLC is great because you separate yourself. If something were to happen, I don't want anything to happen to my car or my wife's car or our house or whatever. It's really just a business matter. So I think you really need to separate that. Definitely find a good accountant and a good lawyer. Basic stuff. Do your homework. Save up. I know there's other types of companies. You could do the INC or whatever, which I don't know if you guys have that or not. But for me, I know I'm just a sole proprietor and not like a partnership. So LLC seemed to be the best.
Now, how long
way.
have you been LLC'd?
It'll be 3 years in a few months.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that this is said, because since this is recording, an LLC isn't going to protect you all that well. If you want real protection, you need to get insurance.
I do have business insurance,
Yeah,
of course.
so like just coming out and registering an LLC you need a lot more than that.
Good.
So,
Yeah,
anything else to add?
No, it's just it's something you should do from day one.
Yeah.
Before you take any work, you should talk to a lawyer, get all that stuff worked out, because it only takes one issue
Yeah.
to
Right.
really make you regret it.
Would you really consider this to be like the first piece of advice you'd give to somebody who really wants to forge out on their own?
It would be damn close to the first
Yeah.
piece of advice. Yeah. Because worst case scenario, you're out whatever that time. If you decide later on, oh, I don't want to do this, this is horrible, all I do is, pull my hair out, you've still got that kind of in place. You're still protected for the most part. Business insurance, absolutely.
Definite must. 3 out of 3
Yeah.
from everybody here.
No question.
Did you guys ever operate, at least for a couple of years, without any kind of entity? Kind of just picking up odd jobs, filling out 1099s, who knows what? Or was this entity something you established early on?
I was right out of the gate. What I did, I set up a business, get an EIN number.
Yep.
And once you have an EIN number, you can go get a bank account. And what you want to do is set up a business checking account, and you're just free checking, so that people can write a check to an LLC and you can cash it, and then set up a payment schedule out of that bank account. And by separating the business money from your personal money, you can manage things like taxes and paying contractors and all that stuff. But it's really hard to do that when you're mingling your personal finances with your business finances.
That would be a big mistake.
Right. So that's actually like right out of the gate. You can even get an EIN without an LLC. You don't have to register an LLC with an EIN. You just go and you just search it on Google, and it's like it's a quick process.
A tax ID number, or
Yeah, basically an EIN
Employee
is
identification number, right?
it's an employee identification number, and what it allows you to do is to get the bank account, but it also, instead of putting your social security number on all of the documents that you're going to be signing and trading with clients, you can put this EIN number on there instead. So it's like an additional level of protection for yourself.
I'm learning a lot right now. This is very helpful, because I'm working with a client right now in California, and they all of a sudden said, okay, we can't move forward anymore until you are a company, like you're an LLC or they wanted me to get a DBA, and I don't know anything about that stuff. So
Right. So a DBA is just a doing business as,
mm-hmm.
which is it's just a fictitious name. It's kind of, if you don't have an LLC, I guess maybe you could get one.
I've never done it.
No.
Yeah, I haven't done it either because I have the LLC, so that just covers everything. Another thing about LLCs is the registration process is state to state, I believe. And basically, you just register your LLC where you're going to be paying your taxes. Delaware is a big, it's the business state, and people mistakenly go and register LLCs in
Really?
Delaware. Yeah, and
Wow.
then they wind up having to do some taxes in Delaware, along with, if you're in business in Pennsylvania, you have to pay Pennsylvania taxes.
Yeah.
If you're in Philadelphia, or any of your clients are in Philadelphia, you have to pay Philadelphia taxes.
Delaware's very attractive because they make it very easy to incorporate. They make it
Right.
very easy to form an LLC.
But
so,
as an individual and a sole proprietor, there's absolutely no reason to do it.
Honestly, just call a lawyer. They'll
Yeah.
charge you a couple hours of their time.
But you can do this.
You can do it yourself.
You can do it all free online. I mean, if you search for
Your
Pennsylvania
accountant could help
LLC,
too.
you got that, Josh? You need to form a company now. Do you have
Yeah.
a company?
you can do it while you're sitting right here.
I actually am on LegalZoom now. So.
But that's like they'll charge you maybe like $400 or $500 to register an LLC, and you don't need to pay that. You could just find the forms on the PA website,
Okay.
I know a good accountant as well.
and then get the
so-
accountant.
Accountants are helpful.
Because the accountant's got to
They're
set you
helpful.
up with a lot of other stuff.
I'm gonna email everybody after this.
There you go.
That's awesome. So, I guess to broaden the scope. Sorry, design, freelancing, whatever. Anyway, what's been the hardest part about doing all this for you guys? we've talked about space and work-life balance and paperwork and legal. Jason?
The hardest part, actually, Saul and I were joking about this when we got here. And when you're freelance, you're basically just in a constant state of going out of business.
That sounds terrifying.
It is, but that's what life is. It's basically you've either got not enough work or way too much work, and there's really rare that you're in this space in between where things are just the right amount of work. And so, you're either going out of business because you don't have anything in the pipeline, or you're going out of business because people are mad because you're not able to like cover off on everything that you said you could cover off on, and so that's kind of the hardest part is when, it's just that constant state of flux, I guess.
Yeah. Saul?
So there's this weird thing of like you're working, you've got work to do, and the phone doesn't ring or the email's really quiet, and maybe that happens for 2 or 3 days, and there's this stress level that builds up, and it usually doesn't hit me until 2 in the morning. It's like I'm trying to fall asleep, and it's like, my God, I don't have any work, and I could have plenty of work, but because I don't have any new work.
But it's all old work.
It's all old work or existing work.
You need that good new work.
good new work with that new work smell, which I really like.
Yeah.
And you jump up, and it's like,
Smells like money.
first thing in the morning, I'm gonna work my email a little, go see what stuff I've quoted that maybe hasn't happened, and what ends up happening is you shake all this work loose that you don't really have time to do. It's like, now I have all this new work, I still have all this old work, and it's this constant flux of you're never going 55 nice and cool. It's always I'm going 80 or I'm stuck in traffic, and it's so difficult to kind of find this.
So it's like my 76 commute anyway?
Yeah.
Is that what it
Yeah.
is? Except mine's literal, whereas yours is more metaphorical.
Yeah, and then the big thing is that you want to tell people, as someone who depends on the work of others, you want to tell them that whatever they need, you've got. But realistically, you can only do what you can do, and honestly, you're best served to just tell them that. It's like, listen, I know you need this on Friday, but realistically, are you going to do anything with it on Friday, or are you going to piss around with it until Wednesday the following week? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't really plan on doing anything until Wednesday the following week, you give me till Tuesday, and it'll be perfect. It'll be as close to perfect as I can get it. But if you need it on Friday, I can give it to you on Friday, but it won't be what you get on Tuesday. And you just to tell them that, and for them to trust you enough to say, I told you I needed it on a Friday, but that was just to make sure I had it for Thursday the following week.
That happens all the time.
Yes.
That's a real business way of approaching things.
Well, people are conditioned to do that because that's their pain point. Their pain point is that they've promised something, and now they need you to promise under that.
Okay.
It's like, I've got $3,000 and I need it next Thursday. I'll give you $1,000 if you can give it to me the week before. It's like, no, that's not the way this is going to work. I'll deliver. Yeah, absolutely.
I will pay you less for a rush order. Essentially.
No.
Oh, wait,
they're cutting back on the time and they're cutting back on the money. So if you say, listen, I can't get it done for that Friday, they still have more money to try to motivate you to get it done.
Interesting.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I have a couple clients who I wasn't originally, I'm really tight with now, who've they don't do that anymore, but they've told me since that was a pretty common practice at design studios and agencies. Maybe it's not so much anymore, but they'd use that extra money, and if you didn't ask for it, more the better. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you have to essentially utilize the sales account or sales executive kind of skills. Would you agree to this whole idea of stormy seas and flux and
we didn't really
when it rains it pours?
We didn't make it sound too good right
now. No, but it's great.
Well,
the fact that you can I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
The fact that you can shake work loose,
right,
is awesome. The problem is it's this stress level when it's quiet that you get that?
Yeah, totally. You have to be able to just have faith that something's going to fall into line.
Right. There you go.
And it always does. That's the thing, is that it always does. It's just a matter of having that faith and being patient and just letting things work out the way they need to work out. And whether that means you have to maybe pick up the call and hustle, or pick up the phone and hustle a little bit more, or go out to some events, over the course of like a week or two to get that ball rolling, so be it. But it's a leap of faith, the whole thing. And so.
Yeah, I totally agree that the fast stop, not knowing where the next paycheck's coming from could definitely be very stressful. But if you kind of spin that a little bit, like look at it this way, like we'll never get fired, we'll never get laid off. Like we have a job. Like if you just kind of keep doing work and be confident, like no one's gonna say, "Oh yeah, you're laid off," or you hear those.
Yeah, you
stories
look yourself
of,
in the mirror one morning. It's like, all right,
like
it's gonna be a difficult conversation, but we're gonna have to let you go today.
Right? So if you look at it that way, like no one's gonna fire you. Like that's kind of cool.
Reminds me of one. I think this is gonna be my last question, and then we're gonna open it up a little bit more. Have you guys ever wanted to quit self-employment? Have you ever thought one day, like, like in your case, Steve, have you ever thought, like, I should just teach full-time. I like it better. It's steady. Well, what do you think? Like, is this, have you ever wanted to quit being self-employed?
I like what I do. The teaching thing works for me. I have a BFA, so I could teach part-time. Mm-hmm. I can't really teach full-time with that anyway. But I wouldn't want to necessarily, like, stop what I'm doing to, like, do grad school to teach full-time right now. But I've thought of it, but no, I'm happy. No,
yeah,
not gonna fire myself.
Saul,
it's a hard question. If something really, really amazing were to come up that I've never done before, I would definitely maybe consider it, but it would have to be something mind blowing that I hadn't touched on at all before. I don't really see that happening.
Jason.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about this. Part of being out and working with different companies is that you kind of feel them out too a little bit. At least I have. And some of the projects I've been working on more recently, I'm a little bit more connected to the client. I'm working almost full time out of spaces right now. So it's definitely in the back of my head that I might make a change sooner than later. And when I was asked to talk tonight, I actually kind of counter-proposed that we do a discussion about how to quit your freelance and start a day job, because there's like zero resources out there for that. Whereas you can go online and there's a lot of people, rah about quitting your full-time job and starting freelance. Yeah. But there's absolutely nothing out there about.
Maybe next season we could do. How do you guys go? Or
there's I feel like there's a lot more. It's a lot more of a psychological challenge to leave something like freelance and go into and go back to working for someone and working at someone else's company, and because you're giving up so much control and there's also like this whole failure thing that kind of comes up. So
there is that.
So yeah, it's definitely been in the back of my head, and but I don't think right now is going to be the time. So
interesting.
We'll
so you guys are pretty much on the same page.
Well, the failure thing is a big. It would be difficult to kind of say, even to existing clients, if you had any work in, you couldn't really do it. You'd be pretty much saying to them, I've been doing this a long time, but it's just not working out. And who the hell wants to do that publicly?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I at the same time I know a few people who have been out for a while who have gone and gotten full-time jobs, and they all seem pretty happy right now. So it is possible. So there you go, full podcast from front to back. Quit your job, start freelance. Quit your freelance, start a job.
Yeah. We'll have to pair these two. Now I kind of really want to do that. So, but
Let's
things to think about next week.
Yeah, all right.
Good.
Yeah.
One of these guys has to quit freelance, get a job in the time. All right, let's open up for some Q&A.
Also,
I know you had some questions, Josh.
Nick, our AIGA Philadelphia president, is away this week, and he wants to call in a question. So
Yeah?
Oh, wow.
Is he available for a phone call right now?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get him. Can we put him on
Yeah,
speakerphone?
well, he was. Yeah, I'm gonna
All
try.
right. Well, Nick can start off our Q&A. But do you have any questions in the meantime while we get him on the line?
Well, everything I had was already
More or
covered.
less covered. Yeah. Anyone else? This guy.
So besides like word of mouth and referrals, how do you guys, when you have to drum up new work, how do you do it? Are you sending out like marketing materials? How do you go about it?
The question had to do with, I guess, self-promotion.
Self-promotion, yeah. Like how do you,
Good thing you asked that because that's actually the topic of our next podcast.
All right, hold on. I got
But I'll
Nick
let
right
these
now.
guys answer that
All
question.
right, Nick is calling.
Oh, Nick is calling?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know what to do.
Man.
I'm gonna
Hello?
look it up.
Let's put that on pause and we'll take Nick's question. Sorry, man.
Nick,
So
you're
cool.
you're on the podcast live in Philadelphia.
Remember to.
It's Night Caps.
Wow. Awesome.
Speak up, Nick.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
How you doing, Nick?
We have this. Excellent. I'm stuck on a plane in Chicago's runway. Fantastic.
Did y'all hear that? He's stuck
Oh,
on a
okay.
plane in Chicago.
You're in the wrong state, Nick.
I think it's.
And that was his question.
And he's out.
I think
So,
it's
all right. So,
He's texting me while he's
yeah.
on, so I'll just have
Okay.
to
If we can,
yes.
well, in the meantime, let's answer this guy's question
All right, yes.
about self-promotion. How do you find more work?
Take it first.
All right. Yeah, I just do I mean, again, most of my work is word of mouth and whatever. It's a mix of, hey, someone recommended I call you because I wanted them to work on something and they're really busy and they said you'd be good for this. It's a mix of that versus someone who, maybe finds my website and sees something they like and they have something similar project in mind. But I do the occasional, self-promo maintenance or whatever. I do a mix of keeping in touch with classmates, old professors, old coworkers. A few years ago, I started hosting some design events. Like you guys from the area probably know, I had like Aaron Draplin come out from Portland, and we did Heads of State one, Modern Dog, multifaceted, highlighted Philly creatives. So anyway, just to kind of get your name out there, I think it's good.
Lots of great networking events in
It's
town
fun.
as well. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't even know which
attending-
specific one I met Saul at, but I think
Oh,
there was
nice.
some networking event here. So
Yeah, attending like AIGA events like this. Go Welsh was in town last week.
appearing on podcasts will also probably get you some work, right, guys?
There you go. Yeah,
So-
I'm sure that the emails are blowing up right now. But I still try to keep. I do the social media thing, Facebook and Twitter and all that. But I still keep doing like here and there. I do some print promos. I do occasional self promo poster or little like logo books and stuff that I'll do. Somewhat to a nicer quality, but just
Yeah.
do limited batches and.
This is a completely
Comes in
separate.
handy.
This is a completely separate topic, but I think the value of print design, in a sense, has gone up, even if you're not printing it.
Yeah.
I found myself as an interactive guy in a situation where it's like, man, I wish I had a really cool graphic for this tweet or a really cool graphic for this header, Facebook event, blog post, you name it, and it's not really within my skill set because I'm not really a print guy.
Sure.
I'm very much in UI now, pretty much full on developer. But anyhow,
Gotcha.
so yeah, get your work
A
out
little
there.
bit of everything.
Yeah, would you guys agree to that?
Yeah.
Pretty much
Yeah.
make use of everything that's out there and get your name and work out there in front of people.
Yeah,
Anything
when
else?
when things get slow, you just build a new website for yourself because that's the only time you're gonna have to do it. And then the other thing that I've done, I'm on my second iteration of this, is I've actually taken time off and learned something new, and then found someone immediately after that to pay me to do it. So I did that when I came out. I originally was doing a lot of Flash work, and then stuff kind of immediately fell off with Flash, and I took maybe a week or two, and I learned Objective-C, and then found a project that I didn't fully learn it, but I learned it enough that I could confidently take something on, or at least it appeared confidently like I could take it on. And then I figured I started working in that, and then I saw some things, and decided that it was time to shift from there, and I took a month actually this time and learned Unity, and then got to the point where I could take on a contract work piece with Unity, and I've been working in Unity since then.
That's awesome. I didn't even know you were doing Unity work at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I'm doing right now.
For the uninformed, what's Unity? Just a framework for building games?
Yeah, so Unity is it's basically a 3D engine that has a scripting. You can work in JavaScript or C#.
Okay.
And most people use it to build games at this point, but I've worked on a project for an architecture firm with it. So anyone who can use like interactive 3D. But also the project I'm working on right now is a 2D game. So you can build all sorts of stuff with it. But the point is that you kind of got to keep, at least I find from the developer standpoint, it's not so much, maybe it is from the design standpoint and it's just in a different frame, but you need to kind of keep fresh and keep redefining yourself and stay ahead of a curve so that work does consistently come in. Because if there's too many people doing the thing that you're going to try and do, they become really easy to hire. And if people are easy to hire, that's, a company is going to have a much better relationship with a hire than with a freelance person. I mean, part of the reason why you're getting freelance is because they can just go like, see you later, and kick you off the team immediately. And, a full-time person, that's a longer-term relationship for them. So if it's cheaper and it's easier to hire someone who's got those technical skills, that's a direction that they're going to go.
All right. So we're getting close to the end here. Do we have any people with questions? We've got time for maybe one or two more.
I have Nick's question.
Do we?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's
take Nick's question.
I realize we touched upon this earlier, but I'm going to say it anyway because he's the president and he can do whatever he wants. His question is, how important is it to share space, and how do you go about finding a studio mate? I think that's more directed to Steve.
Well, I think he knows that question because we share an office, so I'll leave it to you guys.
Wow.
Okay, he's looking for a new studio mate.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Hey, Nick, but just give me some notice, man.
Wow.
Come on.
Indirectly passive aggressive. Jeez.
I thought you liked our little office.
There you go.
Well, you found co-working at
Yeah,
Indie
so
Hall, right?
I've had a lot of success with co-working. I think it's and at this point co-working's matured so much that there's a lot of different options out there for the different type of person that you are and what you're looking for. There's places that cater more towards small teams. There's places. I would say Indie Hall is probably a place that caters towards freelancers and the individual worker.
And now you're over at the Philly Game Forge.
So I'm over at the Philly Game Forge now, and that is a much different experience. I don't know. My office mates there are fairly crazy, and they're very loud. And
See, I was thinking that, but I wasn't going to say it.
no, I'll say it on record because they know it, and they'll say it too, so it's okay. But that's been a completely different experience too, and that's almost more like working with. I'm working on a small team with
and everybody there is a game developer.
Everyone there is a game developer, and we all are working on different games, very different games, drastically different from each other. But you just get the collaboration that you get in co-working is, there's always someone to look at what you're doing, even if it's for a second set of eyes to figure out where a colon needs to go, or if text, is coming off correctly. And their people are perceiving something the same way that you're perceiving it, and that just that level alone is beneficial to doing better work. But then there's the whole fact that you can get work from people who are in co-working. So.
And Saul, you're kind of like the lone gunman here, right? You work by yourself largely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have people on Skype. I have people on. Any one of a half a dozen messaging platforms that I have to keep open all the time. So it's kind of like there are people in the room with me.
Yeah, and you've entertained the idea of co-working before.
Yeah,
right?
I've been to Indie Hall. It's, the problem I have with it isn't so much that I don't have a problem with it at all, except that it's not my comfortable studio at home. And it's 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I have to pay for parking. So those are all, things. The couple times I've been there, it's an amazing place, and there's a lot of energy there that I absolutely don't have in my studio, but there's, you're also sometimes, I don't want energy. Sometimes I want peace and quiet. And that's not easy to find when you're sharing space with a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Alrighty.
So thank you, Nick, for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, for the question. I think that's about it for time, folks. So if you have any other questions for these guys, maybe approach them individually. So I'll just close us off. This has been the second episode of Night Caps, presented by AIG Philadelphia, and recorded live at United by Blue Coffee House and Clothier in Old City. For information on future Night Caps events, check out philadelphia.aig.org, AIG Philly on Twitter. I am your host, Mikey Illigan. You can follow me on Twitter at Mikey Ill and on Geekadelphia. Big thanks to our guests, Saul Rosenbaum, Steve Decusatis, and Jason Marziani. If our listeners wanted to learn or find out more about you guys briefly, where would they go? Jason?
I have, my LLC is Little Wins. My website is lilwins.com. Or they can find me on Twitter. I'm fairly responsive that way. So.
Saul?
I will spare everybody the spelling of Visual Chutzpah, but just Google the Saul Draws.
Okay.
It's that on pretty much every platform.
Awesome. Saul
Very
Draws.
active on Twitter, hugely active on Facebook. Just hit me up. Love to talk.
Steve?
SteveDecusatis.com, DECUSATIS, or Twitter or Dribble or Facebook. And thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Awesome. And if you enjoyed this event, you can also check out AIG Pittsburgh's podcast, Creative Brief. For recordings of AIG Night Caps, go to philadelphia.aig.org. This one will be posted as soon as tomorrow morning, right, Josh?
We'll see.
I'm just kidding. Give it about a week. So also visit to learn more about upcoming AIG Philly events, including First Friday over at their Space. And just a few doors down, there's also check out the Philly Masquerade annual fundraiser and an interactive workshop with Blue Cadet. Josh and I will be back next time with Night Caps on June 26th with a discussion of self-promotion tactics. And that's it, folks. Have a good night.